Hello, Bryn. I've got a new copy of The Borrowers for us. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have any pictures, but it does have a nice cover art. Um, and we are on chapter 10. We just finished off Arietti having a conversation with the boy. And the last line I've got here is, "What do you mean?" asked the boy. "To keep us." I'm going for a picnic later with Jess. And also I have corn, which was 50 cents per ear, a very good deal at the grocery store. Okay, chapter 10. So Arietti told him about borrowing, how difficult it was, how dangerous. She told him about the storerooms under the floor, about Pod's early exploits, the skill he had and the courage. She described those far-off days before her birth, when Pod and Homily had been rich. She described the musical snuff-box, the gold filigree, and the little bird which flew out of it and made... a gold filigree and the little bird which flew out of it made of kingfisher feathers. Kingfishers are like blue and orange. How it flapped its wings and sang its song. She described the doll's wardrobe and the tiny green glasses, the little silver teapot out of the drawing-room case, the satin bed covers and the embroidered sheets. Those we have still, she told him. They're her handkerchiefs. The boy realized gradually, was his great-aunt Sophie upstairs. He heard how Pod would borrow from her bedroom, picking his way in the firelight amongst the trinkets on her dressing table, even climbing her bed curtains and walking along her quilt, and of how she would watch him and sometimes talk to him because, Arietti explained, every day at 6 o'clock they brought her a decanter of fine old pale Madeira, I think that's a wine, and how before midnight she would drink the lot. Nobody blamed her, not even Homily, because, as Homily would say, she had so few pleasures. Poor soul. But Arietti explained after the first 3 glasses, Great-Aunt Sophie never believed in anything she saw. She thinks my father comes out of the decanter, said Arietti, and one day when I'm older he's going to take me there and she'll think I come out of the decanter too. It'll please her, my father thinks, and she's used to him now. Once he took my mother, and Aunt Sophie perked up like anything and kept asking why Mother didn't come any more and saying they'd watered the Madeira because once she says she saw a little man and a little woman, and now she only sees a little man. Oh, the Madeira must be a plant. No. Or maybe it's just water. And she drinks the water, but also waters the plant? Whatever, I'll figure it out later. I wish she thought I came out of the decanter, said the little boy. She gives me dictation and teaches me to write. I only see her in the mornings when she is cross. She sends for me and looks behind my ears and asks if Mrs. D if I've learned my words. What does Mrs. D look like? Asked Arietti. How delicious it was to say Mrs. D like that. How careless and daring. She is fat and has a moustache and gives me my bath and hurts my bruise and my sore elbow and says she'll take a slipper to me one of these days. Aw, this kid has the elbow thing. You know when nannies grab onto your elbow and it like loosens the joint? Someone's not been very kind to him. The boy pulled up a tuft of grass and stared at it angrily, and Arietti saw his lip tremble. My mother's very nice, he said. She lives in India. Why did you lose all your worldly riches? Well, said Arietti, The kitchen boiler burst, and hot water came pouring through the floor onto our house, and everything was washed away and piled up in front of the grating. My father worked night and day, first hot, then cold, trying to salvage things. And then there's a dreadful draft in March through the grating. He got ill, you see, and couldn't go borrowing. So my Uncle Henry had to do it, and one or two others, and my mother gave them things, bit by bit, for all their trouble. But the kingfisher bird was spoiled by the water, and all its feathers fell off, and a great twirly spring came jumping out of its side. Excuse me. My father used the spring to keep the door shut against the drafts, but from the grating, and my mother put the feathers in a little moleskin hat. After a while, I got born, and my father went borrowing again. But he gets tired now, and doesn't like curtains, not when any of the baubles are off. I helped him a bit, said the boy, with the teacup. He was shivering all over. I suppose he was frightened. My father? Frightened? Exclaimed Arrietty angrily. Frightened of you? She added. Perhaps he doesn't like heights, said the boy. He loves heights, said Arrietty. The thing he doesn't like is curtains. I've told you, curtains make him tired. The boy sat thoughtfully on his haunches, chewing a blade of grass. Borrowing, he said after a while. Is that what you call it? What else would you call it? Asked Arrietty. I'd call it stealing. Arrietty laughed. She really laughed. But we are borrowers, she explained. Like you're a human being, or whatever it's called. We're part of the house. You might as well say that the fire grate steals coal from the coal scuttle. Then what is stealing? Arrietty looked grave. Supposing my Uncle Henry borrowed an emerald watch from her dressing table, and my father took it and hung it up on our wall. That's stealing. An emerald watch? Exclaimed the boy. Well, I just say that because we have one on the wall at home, but my father borrowed it himself. It needn't be a watch. It could be anything, a lump of sugar even, but borrowers don't steal. Except from human beings, said the boy. Arrietty burst out laughing. She laughed so much that she had to hide her face in the primrose. Oh dear, she gasped with tears in her eyes. You are funny. She stared upward at his puzzled face. Human beings are for borrowers. It's like bread's for butter. The boy was silent. A sigh of wind rustled the cherry tree and shivered among the blossom. Well, I don't believe it, he said at last, watching the falling petals. I don't believe that's what we're for at all, and I don't believe we're dying out. Oh, goodness, exclaimed Arrietty impatiently, staring up at his chin. Just use your common sense. You're the only real human being I ever saw. Although I do just know of 3 more. Crampfurl, her, and Mrs. Driver. But I know lots and lots of borrowers. The overmantels, and the harpsichords, and the rain barrels, and the linen presses, and the boot racks, and the and the Honorable John Sturtington's, and he looked down. John Sturtington? But he was our granduncle. Well, this family lived behind a pitcher, went on Arrietty, hardly listening, and there were the stovepipes and the bell-pulls, and— Yes, he interrupted, but did you see them? I saw the harpsichords, and my mother was a bell-pull. The others were before I was born. He leaned closer. And where are they now? Tell me that. My Uncle Henry has a house in the country, said Arrietty coldly, edging away from his great, lowering face. It was misted over, she noticed, with hairs of palest gold, and 5 children, harpsichords and cloaks. But where are the others? Oh, said Arrietty, they're somewhere, but where, she wondered, and she shivered slightly at the boy's cold shadow, which lay about her slantwise on the grass. He drew back again, his fair head blocking out a great piece of the sky. "Well," he said deliberately after a moment, and his eyes were cold, "I've only seen 2 borrowers, but I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds—" "Oh no," whispered Arrietty, "of human beings," and he sat back. Arrietty stood very still. She did not look at him. After a while she said, "I don't believe you." "All right," he said, "then I'll tell you." "I still won't believe you," said Arrietty. "Listen," he said, and he told her about railway stations and football matches and race courses and royal processions and Albert Hall concerts. He told her about India and China and North America and the British Commonwealth. He told her about the July sales. Not hundreds, he said, but thousands and millions and billions and trillions of big, great, enormous people. Now do you believe me?" Arrietty stared up at him with frightened eyes. It gave her a crick in the neck. "I don't know," she whispered. "As for you," he went on, leaning closer, "I don't believe that there are any more borrowers anywhere in the world. I believe you are the last 3, he said. Arrietty dropped her face into the primrose. "We are not. There's Aunt Loopy and Uncle Henry and all the cousins." "I bet they're dead," said the boy. "And what's more," he went on, "no one will ever believe I've seen you, and you'll be the last because you're the youngest. One day," he told her, smiling triumphantly, "you'll be the only borrower left in the world." He sat still, waiting, but she did not look up. "Now you're crying," he remarked after a moment. "They're not dead," said Arrietty in a muffled voice. She was feeling in her little pocket for a handkerchief. "They live in a badger's set, 2 fields away beyond the spinney. We don't see them because it's too far. There are weasels and things and cows and foxes and crows." "Which spinney?" he asked. "I don't know," Arrietty almost shouted. "It's along by the gas pipe, a field called Parkin's Beck." She blew her nose. "I'm going home," she said. "Don't go," he said. "Not yet." "Yes, I am going," said Arrietty. His face turned pink. "Let me just get the book," he pleaded. "I'm not going to read to you now," said Arrietty. "Why not?" She looked at him with angry eyes. "Because—" "Listen," he said, "I'll go to the field. I'll go and find Uncle Henry and the cousins, and Aunt whatever she is. And if they're alive, I'll tell you. What about that? You could write them a letter, and I would put it down the hole." Arrietty gazed up at him. "Would you?" she breathed. "Yes, I would. Really, I would. Now can I go and get the book? I'll go in by the side door." "All right," said Arrietty absently. Her eyes were shining. "When can I give you the letter?" "Any time," he said, standing above her. "Where in the house do you live?" "Well—" began Arrietty and stopped. Why, once again did she feel this chill? Could it only be his shadow towering above her, blotting out the sun? "I'll put it somewhere," she said hurriedly. I'll put it under the hall mat." "Which one? The one by the front door?" "Yes, that one." He was gone, and she stood there alone in the sunshine, shoulder deep in grass. What had happened seemed too big for thought. She felt unable to believe it really happened. Not only had she been seen, but she had also been talked to. And not only had she been talked to, but she had— "Arrietty!" said a voice. She stood up, startled, and spun around. There was Pod, moon-faced, on the path, looking up at her. "Come on down," he whispered. She stared at him for a moment, as though she did not recognize him. How round his face was, how kind, how familiar. "Come on," he said again, more urgently, and obediently because he sounded worried, she slithered quickly towards him off the bank, balancing her primrose. "Put that thing down," he said sharply. when she stood at last beside him on the path. "You can't lug great flowers about. You've got to carry a bag." "What do you want to go up there for?" he grumbled as he moved off the stones. "I might have never seen you. Hurry up now. Your mother'll have tea waiting." And that is the end of chapter 10.
I hope you're having a good day. Bye for now.